Hey, I'm I Think You Know, and welcome back to East Yorkshire. In today's episode 3, we'll be focusing on 3 key areas of our city: rail infrastructure, high density housing, and light industry. Seemed simple enough when I thought it up, but this build ended up being both very frustrating and very rewarding. Compared to last episode where we stuck to looking at just one neighborhood, today we'll be looking at 3 key areas: the train station with the rail infrastructure around it, high density residential housing near the station, and light industrial by the river. And if you stick around for the live play, there's a mass transit surprise waiting for you. The train station here is what brought me most of the frustration of this build, almost to the point where I thought of starting over. But in classic Cities Skylines fashion, I was able to troubleshoot and debug the problem. It started all with the train station asset. Turns out this bug is pretty common, but it goes something like this. The game will only spawn intercity trains from off the map, if you build a single track vanilla station first. Once that station spawns and receives a train, then you can delete it and hook up the station that you want to use. Not even the vanilla multi-platform station will work without this trick. For a moment, I thought of ditching the train station I want to use altogether, but after a lot of tinkering with the sequence, I got the train to spawn to it, but only on one track. That is probably an asset problem itself, but I'm going to work around it. In the future, what we'll do is have the remaining 2 sets of tracks split between a run to the north towards the market town and eventually to the seaside, and the other to the west for local stops. I did build a Y to the west of the main station, much like there is in real life, which I hope will handle all this train traffic well, especially after I split out all the cargo rail traffic. For the detailing around the train station, I spent far more time than I should have on the passenger square adjacent to it in this white tile with fences, paths, and other few details. The problem is that after I finished it and I let the simulation run, turns out that this train station asset has cars parked alongside its southern facade next to the kind of canopy hanging over the building. So I had to delete it and make the tile area smaller, but in the end I was pretty happy with it since it does look a bit more like a small square to sit in rather than some giant open area next to the train station. Once I moved on from the train, I wanted to bring to life the area around it, as well as satisfy the almighty green bar and give the game some citizens to work with. And I figured there was no better way to do this than building some high-density tower blocks across the street. I wanted to mirror the 1960s era tower blocks off the main road outside the train station in Hull. They always struck me as interesting. You see some of the tallest buildings in the city, neatly tucked away next to a hospital and a train station, and it really lets you start to understand the dire need to build housing after the devastation and crisis of World War II. We're starting off by building a small road network angled away from the street in order to break it up from feeling too grid-like. We've put each tower on its own zonable pedestrian street, and don't worry, later on I'll make those inaccessible to anything but city services. 3 of these towers felt like enough to me. I was considering adding a 4th one to the west until I realized something very important about these assets. They are RICO and they have about 150 housing units per block. So once I ran the simulation for a while, when I was fixing those train station issues I mentioned earlier, this neighborhood absolutely exploded with growth. Cars everywhere, lots of foot traffic, and exactly the vibe I was looking for. Now, not wanting to put too many towers down meant I had to play around with the corner of this block. I thought, corner pub, obviously. But then I found this really nice L-shaped ploppable flats building and finished the rest of it with some fencing and a few other older looking buildings, figuring that an area around a train station would have been built up around the same time as the railroads became a thing in the middle of the 19th century. I had thought about continuing to expand this area, but once we get the simulation running, the housing needs dropped and the industrial needs spiked. So before moving on, it was time to detail the tower blocks. Given that most of these towers' construction coincided with the mid-20th century automobile boom, you'll often see these surrounded by parking more than you see them surrounded by parks, leisure, or recreation spaces. However, since we already have the big train parking lot across the street, I wanted to avoid this next to the tower blocks. So instead, what we have here is a mix of both scruffy, overgrown vegetation areas and a couple of small areas for recreation. We're using the prop line tool to just lay down some trees to border the area, while putting in some bushes here from the workshop and those amazingly versatile scrubs from the vanilla game that are always really helpful in layering in the detail. Whenever I'm building with those, it kind of reminds me of being at the tattoo shop and having the artist almost be done, but they see their need to really punch in the color into a few areas they've already worked on. It doesn't look like a lot at first, but it really provides that extra pop and detail you need for something to come to life. And at least when I'm playing the game, I'm not squirming in pain during the process. There's a very cute little sandbox asset that allowed us to build a little playground for the kiddos, and on the other side between the two of the towers, we've built a little fenced-in seating area and planted tree to further enhance the detail and make this look like a community. Speaking of communities, before I keep going, I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this video. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. It really does help me out and help to grow this channel. And in the end, it kind of gives me the encouragement to keep churning these out every couple of weeks, to keep the content coming and to continue to build and expand this city. And as always, if you have any comments or suggestions, please leave them below. I do read and try to respond to every single comment that is made, and I'm always happy to take some constructive criticism in order to make these videos better as I continue to improve my process and workflow. But for now, let's move on. Once I saw those industrial needs spiking, it was really time to manage that. First off, I wanted us to fill in that awkward space bound by the overpass, the train tracks, the main road, and the train's parking lot. It's important to be careful putting in-game pollution-causing industrial assets so close to residential, and for a while this was causing sick people in the easternmost tower block. However, I was able to end up solving that by kind of pushing the buildings back a little bit. These three buildings you see here are actually all UK industrial assets that, for me at least, really do mirror that light industrial look that exists in real life. For this quick area though, we're just putting in these three buildings with a gated and fenced lot space behind them. This ended up, along with some properly placed bushes, being a really great way to transition the space next to the train tracks. After having the space mapped out, we had to detail it. First off were rows and rows of bricks. I threw in some tanks and a whole bunch of different kinds of vehicles. Another prop type I really like that always comes in handy and I always recommend are the different types of containers. Go take a look at almost any industrial space on a map and there's always some containers lying around that are either ready to be picked up or have just been dropped off. And finally, and I cannot stress this enough, it makes a really big difference when we detail with decals the ground itself. Industrial areas in particular get lots of wear and tear, so some cracked roads and tire wear marks really help to make the area feel like it's actually being used for its intended purposes. You may also, as we're playing around here, catch a glimpse of the train set that I'm using. In Hull, they have their own train operator, Hull Trains, which runs Hitachi 802 class trains, which are brand new to them actually in the last few years. So what I did was, as I always do, is go hunting on the workshop. And it turns out there's a user named Cram, that's with a K, who has about 25 assets right now, and they're all trains, and pretty much all British trains. So I'm looking at these, I'm clicking through, and bam, there it is. An 802 in Hull Trains livery. And I'll be sure to show you more about how that looks in the live play, but honestly, I was just ecstatic to find an asset that is so true to real life and just really well done, and I can't wait to show it to you later. Finally, the last part of our build today is to go back east to the industrial area whose roads we laid out in episode 2. I hadn't intended this to be part of the build, but we needed some more industrial and the roads were already there just begging to be built out. I mostly tried to emulate what this looks like in real life, just scaled down as always. To start, I've added in the post office, the Royal Mail as they call it. There are a few really nice red Royal Mail trucks and vans on the workshop that made this task a lot easier. But the post office itself is just a vanilla asset and one of the better vanilla assets as far as I'm concerned. There also is a Royal Mail sign asset, but for whatever reason it's oriented the wrong way, and without procedural objects, which I don't use, I don't have a way to kind of fix that and make it work, but maybe one day in the future. You might also see some props kind of popping in and out as I zoom around, both now and throughout this build, and I apologize for that. It turns out that my ultimate level of detail settings don't copy from save to save. I also had been running adaptive prop visibility distance mod, but that's an older mod and it appeared to be conflicting. So you'll see the results in the live play, but removing that mod and adjusting my ULOD settings, not only does the city now look the way it was supposed to when zooming out, but my frame rate has been boosted. Running at 25 FPS at 1440p when zoomed in feels buttery smooth compared to the 8 or so FPS I used to get on my NYC build. I know it won't last as I build further and keep laying down props, but hey, I'll take it while it lasts. Because this industrial area is so strangely shaped, I made the center of it into a parking lot and nestled all of the other buildings around it, and I feel like I definitely made the right call doing that. It pushes us into using assets that look better for the area rather than just trying to find larger assets to fill in the extra space. Afterwards, a little further detailing and dropping in a petrol station by the main road, it was pretty much time to wrap up the time lapse. I've been trying to keep my videos in the 15 to 20 minute range, but please let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see something a bit more substantial for future videos. I would like to do a live stream in the future, but I think I should work towards a specific subscriber count before giving that a try, so stay tuned for that. And without any further delay, let's get into the live play. Alright, and here we are in the live play. Thank you very much for sticking around if you are still here. And let's go take a look at what's happening here. So, just a note, I'm doing this all kind of ad hoc. No script for this live play today. Just kind of want to show you what we built and talk about the future a little bit. So over here in this industrial area, as you can see, I haven't really heavily detailed it, and I definitely want to go back and touch it up a bit more in the future, but one thing that I am happy that came out in this area is this little bus stop that I put in. This is actually on a bus line that loops through the neighborhood we built in episode 2, but it has to go somewhere, right? And that's leading me to the little mass transit surprise that I alluded to earlier in the video, and here it is. I have gone ahead and built out a little bus station right next to the train station, which actually was the perfect time as this train comes in. So here is that whole train's livery train set, which just looks amazing. Of course, in Cities Skylines, it always does that funky thing when it changes tracks, but fits so nicely within the train hall here, and I don't know, it's just a really nice asset, really happy with it. You can see it zoom underneath here of this overpass, which I used some brick wall networks to kind of mold a pedestal for them, and I really think that came out nice, and I'll probably apply the same treatment to the other overpass in the back here, but I don't really want to touch that until I get over there. But anyway, back to the bus station. So I've gone ahead and used these little, I think they're shelters, I forget who makes them, but they work really well to kind of cover up where the passengers will stand while kind of letting the buses not be on the overhang. And I just have the one stop set up for now, but I'm really hoping to have all of these branch out to different parts of the city as we keep going. And then right next to here, I haven't finished the detailing on this, but I think I left it in a decent place for now as I continue to figure out the rest of the area in future episodes. But I threw down this anchor, which, you know, Hull being a maritime city, I thought really fit in well. Found this on the workshop, fell in love with it. Threw a little tile underneath it and some benches around, and people are actually making their way through. I've put an invisible path through this way, and why isn't that running? There we go. And on top of that, I've also gone ahead and detailed this intersection, adding in, you know, a yellow crossed box in the middle, and I've laid down a bunch of decals and used the intersection marking tool to kind of lay out these bike lanes. At least on this first run here, I'll have to decide how much further I extend it to other streets in the area. And then outside of the train, we did build this little seating area here. I gotta find maybe like one of those spawners, see if I can get some people to show up here, but it could probably use a little bit more, but I think it looks a lot nicer than it would have if I had originally had it taking up this entire area. It would have been way too much. This certainly needs some more detailing, but I want to kind of wait and see how this functionality continues to work with this Corsair. And then the last bit was just all of the area over here with the tower blocks, and look at all the people walking around. It really is truly alive. You'll see people using the bike lane, which is cool. And just in the area behind here, it's all just full of people, and really kind of enjoying the way this is coming together and acting. And it kind of makes me think about the future, because, you know, do I want to try to add more residential into here? Do I want to keep spending my time on this area for now? What's really bugging me is the city center. It's really what needs to work next. So I have a concept that I'm kind of throwing around in my head for what I'm going to do with this area along with the park. So that might be a next episode. It's certainly going to be in the next few. And probably I'm thinking about this area, maybe a large shopping mall, retail center. I don't know. I have a lot to think about. Let me know below what you would like to see next. I'm definitely happy to play around with what your suggestions are. But if not, I'm hoping to get the next video out to you in about 2 or 3 weeks as usual. And I will see you then. Thank you so much.